Hey everybody. So with patch 10.7 coming out April 1st, we did the patch rundown this weekend, but unfortunately we got some data back on Monday that has forced us to make some changes to the patch. So I wanted to do another updated rundown to make sure you get the updated patch data going into the patch. So I'm going to go kind of quick because I just want to cover the changes, the things that are a little different. So yeah, let's jump right into it. So as we mentioned, the galaxies are launching. Still the same three galaxies, but there are a few little details that are a little bit different. Yeah, so just a couple things there. Nico's help is a little different. Lilac Nebula is basically the same, and Medium Legends is just a little bit different. Medium Legends, we're going to do a little bit more HP than just the 25. We think this will make games a little longer, but I think we're okay with that. We think people really want to commit to a long game, so. Level 8 drop rates. I actually had the numbers wrong last time. As people pointed out, it didn't add up to 100. So now it does add up to 100. So you'll notice the legendary drop rates at level 8. They're a little higher, actually, but should be okay. I mentioned special carousels occur less often. I was wrong, by the way, about that. It's actually just carousels in general happen less often. Sometimes there just won't be a carousel. We think that'll help with adaptability because we think good players can overcome, if they don't get the items they're looking for. So look forward to that. The item rule combining thing hasn't really changed much. And then the other thing is, so we added additional time for the first patch, as I mentioned. But the big thing here was we actually found that the extra time was really helpful for new players, especially for mobile, and we only care about mobile players, so we've actually added an additional 35 seconds per planning phase. So now there's 60 seconds. So it should give mobile players a lot of time to make those changes. Darkstar and Mono Reaver, nothing really changed here on the updates, so I'm going to skip these for now. Still being updated this patch, so look forward to those. Blade Master, despite the changes we made on PBE, they were still really underperforming. So we went ahead and changed those numbers. Brawler is still the same, nothing changed there. Chronos 6 was also underperforming just a little bit, so we had to change those numbers. Mystic, as I pointed out, was actually the best performing trait in the game. So we kind of felt like we were being too light on the nerfs, so we went ahead and changed that. So these numbers should be a little bit more fair. I don't think Mystic will be the best trait in the game after this. And then lastly, with Sniper, I got a lot of feedback from pro players that they felt like Sniper was going to become the new dominant meta. So we pulled back on the buff just a little bit. We think this buff is more in line and should be a little less risky. Caitlyn, I had the cast time reversed. Sorry about that. So this is the new cast time. Should be fine for Caitlyn there. Xayah as well. Again, kind of like with Blade Master, Xayah was just underperforming. So the attack speed at 0.8 wasn't really doing it enough, so we went ahead and buffed her attack speed. Ziggs, as I mentioned, was overperforming, but I had the number wrong. It wasn't 45 mana, so I got the corrected number there. Should be good. We think this will bring Ziggs kind of in line. Should be okay. And then lastly, Zoe, apparently we actually went a little harder than I thought. With Zoe, we wanted to really make her feel like Summoner's Rift. Kind of like Power of Evil was just one-shotting your team. So we tried to make that fantasy a little more reality here with these numbers. So hopefully this should feel a lot more like Summoner's Rift Zoe was kind of the goal here. Darius buffs. Yeah, a lot of people weren't really happy with the Darius buffs, but again, still really underperforming, so we went ahead and changed it. So his spell should be a lot more exciting now. It also doesn't say it here, but we actually made it so his spell ignores Guardian Angel, so we think that should be a substantial buff. Lastly, the Xin Zhao numbers I presented last time were causing a lot of confusion. A lot of people were like, hey, the number went up, so that's a buff. So we went ahead and nerfed it, so now the number's smaller, so that should be really clear. So this is clearly a nerf to 3-star Xin Zhao with these numbers. Clearly a nerf. Next up is Ezreal. We wanted to try something a little different with Ezreal, so we actually tried some reverse scaling. We want Ezreal to be the 1-star unit in the game you want to keep. So we're trying a little bit different scaling there. This should be interesting. Kassadin has been quoted as a unit that people would never buy, and so we think the 80 mana wasn't really a big enough change, and the data kind of showed that. So we decided to push this a little further. So now I think Kassadin will be a unit people will want to buy at these numbers. And then lastly is Shaco. we got a lot of confusion with how his spell worked. So we decided to just pull it the whole way, and now it's just a nice solid auto attack is his spell, and so we don't have to worry about any of the pesky math behind that. So Shaco should be a lot easier to understand with these numbers. Next up is Soraka. Soraka wasn't really working with the numbers we gave her, no matter how high we put them. So we're trying a different approach. Soraka actually does negative healing now. This should allow your team, if you wanted to get them to low health for any various reasons, you can do that now. So Soraka is a really cool option to try to get your team to low health so they can do some cool stuff. Vel'Koz. So we kept the Vel'Koz buff. The mana buff made a lot of sense here. But as people pointed out, it was actually the targeting that was causing problems. He was targeting near enemies, but it really wasn't making sense. So we changed that targeting paradigm here, so hopefully that should be good. And then lastly, with Wukong, we tried the buff to 950 HP, but the data kind of backed what players were saying, which is like, he's still not really tanky enough. So we turned that number up just a little bit more. Hopefully this should make Wukong kind of tanky. Should be pretty good frontline, so see how that plays out. Now, next slide is the controversial 5 costs. 5 costs have been a bit of a struggle to balance, obviously, with 10.6. As I mentioned, with 10.7 we had some changes. But as we tried them in our simulations, it just wasn't panning out the way we thought it would. So we came in last minute and did a few more changes. Aurelion Soul, the spell damage numbers were correct, but we changed the targeting paradigm here. We think with this targeting paradigm, Rebel players won't be quite as successful, so this should be good. As I mentioned, we also care a lot about mobile players, but we also wanted to give some counterplay to mobile players. So with Echo, we changed how his freeze works. This should cause a little less confusion. Gangplank. Gangplank's a tricky one. So we tried the nerf numbers with Gangplank, and it felt kind of bad. So we actually ended up reverting the numbers, and we ended up buffing it. But to make up for that buff, we've changed his targeting paradigm. So instead of always hitting where he was targeting, we changed that. So we think this targeting paradigm should make Gangplank still a really exciting champion, but also still have some variant outcomes. Some really memorable moments, if you will. Lulu, I got kind of accused of not nerfing her enough. And we took a look, and she's really strong. So we wanted to make her less synergistic with Shojin, and we feel like this change hits that goal. And then lastly was Misfortune. Unfortunately, this one's... I really hate to talk about this one because this is actually a bit of a bug, but we weren't able to ship the new updated AI anymore, so we actually had to go back to set 1 AI. We do think with the enhanced attack speed that might still be okay, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Let us know. Morellonomicon. So one of the things that was kind of tying our hands here was Red Buff and Morellonomicon always had to be the same burn number. What this led to, though, was Red Buff right now is really strong and Morello is really balanced, but you have to nerf them both, and that kind of felt bad. So we decided to finally decouple them here. So this way, Morellonomicon can stand out on its own and do a specific burn, and Red Buff can stand out on its own and do a specific burn. So now they each have their own numbers, and this should allow them to both be balanced in their own right. Static Shiv, the 5 damage buff wasn't really enough, so we're trying a new approach here. Kind of like Gangplank, we think this will create some really variant outcomes. I actually recommend, if you want to give it a try, Static Shiv Gangplank. It's a new build I think should be pretty successful. And then lastly, a lot of people have been talking about this one, so we took a really risky change with Warmogs. With Warmogs, we've decided that you needed a way to kind of counteract games where you were low rolling. So we've created some Little Legend HP regeneration. So if you build Warmogs and put it on your Little Legend, you can actually get some of your HP back. This might lead to a little bit of longer games, but again, we think it's worth it for the strategy. Some other changes, the dances are still in. We did make one change, though. The reception's been really positive to these. So we're going to have them last for 60 seconds. That way you can really embrace them. We think this is especially true if you're losing. So we're going to make those last 60 seconds. We updated Grave Splash Art. That hasn't changed. We also put in a change for Rioters specifically because we felt like they weren't performing as well as other players. So we wanted to make sure that that was a fair and balanced situation. So Rioters now start game with 100 gold. Seems fair. And lastly, we put in a change to make sure that our top level players, because we really care about like competitive integrity, and our top level players are engaged players. So we want to make sure that they're getting the experience they're looking for. And so this change should allow that to be true. Last slide. Bug fixes. Hand of Justice healing no longer scales with AP. That's a good thing. That was a bug. Rebel Shield no longer scales with AP. That was a bug. It was supposed to scale with AD, so we fixed that. Celestial Healing no longer scales with AP. It scales with Dodge Chance instead. So if you're running Celestial, you want to get your Thieves Gloves, your Trap Claws, really maximize that Dodge Chance to try to get your Celestial Healing is up. Lucian's Relentless Pursuit had this problem where it wasn't killing enemies in one shot. So we went ahead and fixed that. There was also this bug sometimes where if you had Misfortune on your team, you could lose. So fix that bug. God, so many people sent me this one. The Aurelian Soul not working with GA. So we fixed it so no one works properly with GA. That way it makes sense and is consistent across the game. We clarified Shaco's tooltip. This was a good chance to bring back an old fan favorite. So Shaco's ability now reduces a random enemy to 100 HP at the start of combat. We think players will really like that. No reason to believe from any past experiences why they wouldn't. So we updated Zoe's tooltip to specify she deals cards at a local casino. We updated Poppy's tooltip to specify that it's a tooltip in case there was any confusion there. Hextech Gunblade now reduces your little legend to 1 HP, as it should. Makes sense. Celestial bonus now correctly doesn't heal when dealing damage. And lastly, Space Pirates, we fixed it so that they only give you spatulas. That way, if you're running Space Pirate, it can balance out kind of their inherent weakness, and you can get the items you're looking for and run that 17-person comp you've been trying to optimize. So again, definitely wanted to apologize that these last-minute changes are coming in hot. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoy this patch. Hopefully the meta gets healthier. That's going to do it for this time. Take it easy. Okay, but for real, if you stuck around, this is an April Fool's Day joke. These aren't real. They're not coming to live server. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye.